Hello, everyone, and welcome to MindTea, a podcast where we discuss sip-sized, practical tools for meaningful living. I'm your host, Izzy Wan, a mindfulness teacher, tea ceremony host, hypnotherapist, and speaker. In today's episode, I want to share with you how to actually appreciate life, not in the superficial sense of gratitudeless, non-stop, or positive vibes only, but a deeper, more embodied appreciation beyond the money, the success, or the status. It's easy to be grateful when things are going well for us, but how do we feel gratitude when life doesn't go as we planned? I'm going to start off by sharing with you a story that changed my own perspective, and then we're going to dive into 3 reframes that can help you to appreciate life more meaningfully. So this story is something that's actually quite hard for me to recall, because it's not something that I've openly talked about before, except with 1 or 2 close friends, and also something that I'm probably still working on to some degree today. I'd never witnessed death in my life until my final year at university. It was during COVID, at a time when the world already felt heavy, and one afternoon my family called to tell me that my grandma's health was deteriorating and that she only had a couple of months left to live. So I began calling every day, and each day I watched as her face started to fade a little bit more, and some days I couldn't even finish the call because the sight of her fragility broke me so much. And I couldn't even say I love you without choking on my own tears. So it wasn't something that I was able to say to her, and something that I do regret now. So anyways, I decided to fly back to Hong Kong to see her, but because of the strict COVID regulations at the time, I wasn't allowed to board my first flight. And I tried again desperately the next day, and thankfully I was able to fly. But during my transit, I had a call to tell me that she was already passing away. So I take the flight, and I arrive in Hong Kong. And I spent the following 2 weeks quarantined alone, per the regulations at the time, in a hotel room for 14 days just across from the hospital that she would have been in, finishing my 3 essays and my final dissertation while processing my grief in isolation. It was one of the hardest periods of my life, and a period in which I contemplated a lot, because it was the first time that I'd lost someone I loved so deeply, and also without the privilege of saying goodbye in person. And I had extreme paranoia about losing the people I loved in my life during that time, and would constantly have nightmares and a lot of intrusive, unwanted, obsessive thoughts about losing the people that I loved the most. But it made me realize something I had only known intellectually, but never truly felt up until this point: that life is temporary. That we are all just visitors here, ourselves included. And every moment, every connection, and every cup of tea is borrowed time. And when I was able to accept this fact and work through it, I started to ask myself, what does it really mean to appreciate life when you know that nothing lasts forever? My answer to this came in 3 reframes, which we're going to talk about in this episode today. Number 1, Memento Mori. I'm going to start off with the most well-known one, and probably one that you've heard as well, but we're going to go a little bit deeper this time. The concept of Memento Mori. It's a Stoic concept that means remember you must die, and the point of it is to remind us of our mortality in order to inspire virtuous action. So I want to invite you to picture this with me now. Picture another Sunday afternoon. You've just eaten your lunch, you took a nice walk on your usual route, and you're heading to your GP's office for another routine visit. You wait in the corridor, and the doctor calls your name and closes the door behind you, looks down and says, "I'm really sorry. We've done all the tests, and you have 1 month to live." What changes in that moment? What feels urgent, and what suddenly doesn't matter at all? How does it change the way you move about the rest of your day? What would happen on your route back? How would it impact your next second, your next hour, your next day, and your next week? How would you approach your relationships, even those that have wronged you, and especially those who have wronged you? How would you approach your loved ones, or those who you've lost touch with? I often think the problem is actually that we think we have time, We put things off, the dreams that we have for ourselves, the people we want to see, and the family that we want to reconnect with, because we think we have time. I can do that later. But actually, no one guarantees our later. When we leave this earth, the Grim Reaper doesn't come knocking, being like, hey girlie, are you ready to go? Let's go. And that's not to make us spiral into all of the should-haves that society has bestowed upon us, we should have done this by this timeline, or to regret what you haven't yet done. It's more so to remind us of what actually matters in our lives right now. What are your values and priorities? What matters to you right now if tomorrow wasn't guaranteed? And that's what the concept of Memento Mori is about. And it's a reflective concept reminding us of our mortality, not to instill fear, but to inspire action. I was watching a documentary on people who live in the blue zones the other day, and for those of you who don't know, blue zones are regions where people live longer, healthier lives with lower rates of chronic disease. And what surprised me about these blue zones was that people did not avoid talking about death, but they rather accepted it as a natural part of life, and they incorporated death into their worldview, focusing on living a meaningful life, having strong social and spiritual connections, which allows for these open conversations about mortality and the acceptance of it. Many of these people are far less concerned with the fear of death and more so about how to live fully and enjoy each moment that they do have, which reduces the need for a fearful or hidden conversation about it. And perhaps this is something we can incorporate into our own lives too, the acceptance of, rather than the ignoring of, because life will take its course regardless of whether or not we want to accept it. Studies actually show that contemplating mortality can increase life satisfaction and motivation by activating regions of the brain linked to self-relevance and purpose, like the medial prefrontal cortex. So in simple terms, awareness of death makes life feel more precious and can even make people kinder and more present. How can you incorporate the answers from the practice that we've done earlier into your own life today? For me, it came in forgiving, even internally, anyone who has done me wrong in the past and sending these positive intentions out to them in whatever way I am able to, even if I won't speak to them again, that's okay. In my heart, I know that I've forgiven them. I know that I send them love, and I know that every person has this universal need for love, to be loved and to be accepted and to be seen. And that alone already makes me feel a lot better about things. Number 2, cultivating a beginner's mind. Have you ever noticed how the first bite of a meal always tastes the best? Or how the first time you fell in love, everything felt electric? Or how the first time you master a skill, that one time is the most rewarding? That's because the first encounter is the one that triggers those first neural sparks. The novelty is what makes us wake up from our day-to-day routines and sends us into a state of presence and pleasant surprise. The only time we really experience this is when we're encountering something different, novel, or new. In psychology, we have a concept called habituation, which describes what occurs when we have a reduction in the frequency or the magnitude of our response to a stimuli after having been exposed to it multiple times. It's a very important mechanism for us to adapt to our environments by filtering out constant, non-threatening stimuli. While that's useful for survival, it also means we stop noticing what's already good. It means that we get used to things around us very often. When we eat the same meal multiple times, we forget how good it tastes. When we see our partners again and again each day, we may no longer value them as much as we first did. And when we keep walking the same route across the park each day, we may forget how much we enjoyed looking at the flowers along the way or the bees buzzing around us. That's where the Zen concept of Shoshin, or the beginner's mind, comes in, to appreciate what we have in front of us without taking it for granted. A beginner's mind is a term we often use in mindfulness, and is a term coined by Japanese Zen master Shinryu Suzuki, and it describes this ability to see the present moments in a fresh way, as if for the first time. Seeing things without our existing labels or having these preconceived opinions of the situation can allow us to experience things differently. to experience with curiosity, openness, and engagement. A beginner's mind is about intentionally introducing novelty in the things that we take for granted. Now, there are several ways that you can practice this, but one very easy way that you can start doing this now is by taking a familiar walk in your usual route. But this time, try and intentionally notice 5 things that you've never seen there before. I regularly practice this, and it's crazy to say, but I've noticed more than 10 different things every single time on my walk. 10 completely different things that I didn't notice the time before. And that's the same route that I take every day, but cruise through on autopilot because it's become so regular to me. So beginner's mind is something we can start cultivating in our usual routines to bring us back into appreciating our present moment. Number 3, minimalism, creating space for meaning. There's a quote I love that goes, "You arrive with nothing, you spend your life chasing everything, and you still leave with nothing. Make sure your soul gains more than your hands." Isn't that ironic? Because when we really think about it, most of our daily stress, our comparison, our judgments, they often stem from a world that constantly tells us that we need more. We need more success, we need more validation, more productivity, and more things, more material goods. We need to be more. But minimalism isn't really about owning less. It's about needing less to feel full in who you are. I grew up in a household that enjoyed hoarding a lot of things just in case. So in my teenage years, when I started living in boarding school on my own, I also had this mindset of getting more clothes, more food, and more jewelry just in case. I would go into the store for one sports top and I'd come back with 2 full bags of clothes that I didn't even need. But I noticed that every time I bought something, it felt exciting in that moment, but the satisfaction faded so quickly. It was like a cycle. And in my 20s now, I've noticed that this happiness is similarly equated with accumulation, but accumulation of achievements, of titles and possessions, which I think is especially easy to get caught up with in this age when the world feels like our oyster. There's a term for this we call the hedonic treadmill in psychology. It's our brain's tendency to quickly adapt to positive changes and then return to its baseline level of happiness. Each time we achieve or acquire something new, dopamine, our brain's motivation and reward neurotransmitter, gives us this rush of excitement. But once that novelty fades, the brain resets and searches for the next hit. We start chasing the next milestone, the next purchase, and the next external validation. Now, I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to achieve goals, with wanting to have more for yourself, do more, have more experiences, and any of the above. But it's when we become overly attached to all of these external things that we start to move away from our internal self. That's when it becomes something that we can start contemplating about more. So minimalism is about the subtraction of this external noise. It's about the act of intentionally removing these distractions, whether it's physical, mental, or emotional, so that we can really hear our internal selves again. One of my favorite podcasts is the Minimalist podcast, where the hosts Joshua Fields Milburn and Ryan Nicodemus share how, after years of climbing this corporate ladder and chasing material success and being on the top of the mountain, they discovered that everything they owned was owning them. The weight of maintaining, of storing, cleaning, and upgrading their possessions created this mental fog in them. And once they began to let go, they realized this newfound freedom that doesn't come from what we have, but from what we no longer need to hold on to. Minimalism also teaches us about attention as a real currency of life. When we have fewer things, our awareness becomes sharper. We start noticing subtleties. The way sunlight falls on the floor in the morning, the sound of a kettle beginning to simmer, and the warmth of a familiar voice. These moments are easy to overlook when our world is so crowded, but they are in truth the moments that make life life. When you slow down enough to see what remains once the noise fades, you often find that what's left is what truly matters. Your relationships, your health, your peace, your purpose. And this is what I'm talking about when I refer to the internal self. When we strip away the excess, What's left isn't emptiness, it's essence. So those are the 3 reframes that have personally helped me to make life more meaningful, and I hope they provided some value to you today as well too. And these reframes are: number 1, Memento Mori, the concept of remembering that we too, like everyone else in this world, are just temporary visitors in this earth. Number 2, cultivating a beginner's mind to appreciate what we already have. And number 3, minimalism, the art of embracing less, not more. I want to close today's episode with a poem that captures everything we've talked about: fragility, appreciation, and the beauty of something temporary. It's called If I Had My Life to Live Over, and the backstory of this poem is that it's a real-life reflection of an 85-year-old woman from Kentucky who provided the words after someone asked her how she would have lived her life differently if she had another chance. If I Had My Life to Live Over by Nadine Stair. If I had my life to live over, I'd dare to make more mistakes next time. I'd relax. I would limber up. I would be sillier than I have been this trip. I would take fewer things seriously. I would take more chances. I would climb more mountains and swim more rivers. I would eat more ice cream and less beans. I would perhaps have more actual troubles, but I'd have fewer imaginary ones. You see, I'm one of those people who lived sensibly and sanely, hour after hour, day after day. Oh, I've had my moments, and if I had to do it all over again, I'd have more of them. In fact, I try to have nothing else, just moments, one after another, instead of living so many years ahead of each day. I've been one of those persons who never goes anywhere without a thermometer, a hot water bottle, a raincoat, and a parachute. If I had to do it again, I'd travel lighter than I have. If I had my life to live over, I would start barefoot earlier in the spring and stay that way later in the fall. I would go to more dances. I would ride more merry-go-rounds. I would pick more daisies. Alright guys, that's all I have for you today. So thank you for being here, and if any of these resonated with you today, let me know in the comments below. I always enjoy reading your feedback and learning insights from you. If you took any value from this episode, I'd be so grateful if you could do me a favor and take a moment to subscribe and rate the show, or share it with someone you love so more people can benefit from mindfulness. Until next time, keep steeping in wisdom, and don't forget to take a moment for yourself today, even if it's just 5 minutes.